Alrighty, this is a 1996 Mercedes W202 W202 chassis C220 model. What I'm doing today is I'm removing the EGR valve, cleaning it, and replacing it. What happened was I went in for smog. The emissions passed. There was a mechanical check that came back for check engine light. As soon as they pulled the car out of the bay, stopped it, and I restarted it, the check engine light was gone. When I went to check the readiness on my handheld tester, I got a mill was okay. EGR was not ready, and the cat was not ready. I already know that I need to replace both of the cats, but what I'm hoping to do is in California you're allowed one fault before it passes smog. EGR apparently did pass because otherwise it would have sent up an error code, and it would have come back in the smog report. It did not do that. So what you're going to have to do if you want to get to this EGR valve, what you'll need to do is you'll need to take off the fuel rail, because the back of the fuel rail right here, this section, sits just about right over top of where the EGR valve goes. So what does the EGR valve look like? Well, glad you asked. EGR valve looks like this, and this is the orientation that it takes. I've got a broken piece off of there because what I did last time when I did my head gasket replacement was I did something really stupid. I was in a rush to get it all put together because I was all amped up that I got the head gasket finished, and I just kind of slapping things together, and I broke a piece of metal off of there, which is not good. Anyway, I did check the pressure on, did check the vacuum on the EGR valve, and the EGR does hold vacuum. I'll go ahead and walk you through that procedure right now. Back over to the bench. So what I'll do to check the vacuum, again, what I said earlier was there's a diaphragm in here. What happens to this a lot of times, since this EGR valve sits so closely to the head, it builds up a lot of heat, and this diaphragm in here is made of either rubber or silicone. I'm not sure which one it is, but if it's got a leak in it, when you pump it up, you will hear a hiss if you put your ear close to it, and it will not hold vacuum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pump this up to, let's say, pump it up to about 20 is plenty. Okay, what you're looking for on this, and I don't know what the bleed down time on this is, but figure it's about 18 psi right now, and it is holding vacuum. Okay, it's been on there for about 10-15 seconds now, and when you pump that up, what will happen is, see, that little white diaphragm will contract, so the top of the valve goes up to the top of the EGR valve, and it opens up this port down in here so that your exhaust gas can go from right here, your manifold, through the exhaust port right there. And if you look at where this is connected, this winds around all the way down to the throttle body, where it gets sucked into the combustion chamber. Okay, so we're still at about 18, so I'm confident that this is holding vacuum. There are no leaks in the diaphragm. When you're checking this yourself, I can't get this to hold steady, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to set this up. So testing the CGR valve for vacuum, really pretty simple. It's going to be simply pumping this up to about 20 psi. You can see it right there. And what you'll do is you just simply remove the source of the vacuum. You want to remove it immediately, and what you should hear is a little pop when you pull that off. All right, here we go. There you go. Did you hear that? That little snap, that'll tell you that your diaphragm and the valve are closed completely. When you look at it from underneath, that valve is going to be sitting down in the closed position. So she's ready to roll. Okay, So what we'll do now, we'll bring this back over to the car, and I'm going to begin the process of reassembling this. So what I'll do is I'm not going to take you through the whole install procedure. It's just, you know, cranking nuts and bolts and putting things back together. Oh, one more thing I did want to mention is when you're unloosening this this EGR valve. Make sure to clean inside of this little chamber in here, right? Because that is a source of exhaust. You can already see the carbon inside built up there. I've seen some videos, and I've got some personal experience on working with cars where you've got oil mixed in with the exhaust, and it's just a god-awful looking mess. If yours is, you know, if you've got the benefit of having it nice and clean like this one is, then good deal. It just means there's no oil in your exhaust, which is nice. But you do want to take, you know, a shop rag, put some brake cleaner on it, clean that stuff out, because it will affect the performance of your EGR valve. Okay, so when you're reassembling this, make sure what you do first is the end of, you know, the orientation of the EGR valve is really pretty easy to figure out. What you have to do first is you have to insert the output side or the exhaust side of the EGR valve into this line, into this aluminum line right there. You can see it. It's going to wind up underneath the wiring harness, and that's it right there. So it is made of aluminum, and you know, unless you know that you have some kind of a clog in there, what I tried to do is I tried to snake that out with some wire. I could not get it past it bends several, you know, a couple different times, just at about 90-degree angle. So it is difficult to get wire through there to kind of flush out all the carbon that's built up inside of there. And then where this ends up is, I'm not sure if I can get the phone down there, but where it does end up is right underneath the throttle body. So unless you take the throttle body off, if you can get it off with just hand tools or maybe a claw foot or something like that, then go for it, because it is very difficult to get to, and really not a lot of working room in there. So, but you know, insert the exhaust part of the EGR into this aluminum exhaust tube first. Otherwise, it really won't go in right. And you'll know when it's seated correctly, because it, you know, you'll push on it. Don't crank on this thing, but just push it in. There is a gasket that helps it to seal. Make sure that gasket is in place. And there are two bolts. There's one that connects there, or one that goes in there, and another on that side right there. What you'll want to do is the first thing you'll want to do is you'll want to seat the exhaust side of the EGR into the exhaust tube that feeds into the throttle body, which is right there. You need to do that first. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. Second thing is then you'll want to orient your EGR valve over top of that exhaust port, and then tighten down the bolts. Third step is going to be to tighten that fitting right there. Now there are two nuts. There's there's a nut right here. This nut right there that the end of my ratchet is touching. The end of my wrench is touching. And then there's a second one that's a slidable collar that slides up and down that exhaust tube. That's the one that you're going to need to finesse back into place. So with these attaching bolts, those are both hex, and that's going to be a hex number 5, I think it is. So there are two of them, one there, one there. Once you've got that into place and you've got that tube and the collar over top of that threaded exhaust part, you'll just need to tighten it in as much as possible. It doesn't need to be super tight. Hand tight is fine. All you want to do is make sure that no exhaust gas gets past that. And then ditto on those two bolts there. You just want to make sure they're hand tight. You don't need to crank on those to 75 foot-pounds or anything, because otherwise you'll strip those bolts, and that's a pain in the ass. Back in a minute after I've done a little more wrenching. All right, so I've got the EGR back on. It took a little bit of doing. What you will need is you'll need a pair of, both to take it on and to take it off and put it on. You'll need a pair of 19-inch wrenches. Just to the taking it off is more important. You'll need a 19-inch wrench to hold this portion here. Get my finger out of there, get you some light. So you'll need a 19-inch wrench to hold the nut on as part of that. That's part of the EGR valve body steady while you turn that collar nut. It's not fun work, but it will get it done. It'll get it off. When you go to put it back on again, you really won't need that second 19-inch wrench. What you will need is, again, some patience and a little bit of finesse. I could not turn this with the wrench anymore, so what I did was I went underneath here, underneath this part of the wiring harness, and all I did was I grabbed it like that and I turned it by hand. So again, tight enough is probably good enough for this job. Unless you've got a clawfoot wrench, then you're golden. You can tighten it up as much as you want to. Again, just snug is good because you just don't want the exhaust gas to escape out of that tube. Okay. I'm going to put, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reassemble everything. I'm going to start with putting the fuel rail back on, then I'll get to the spark plug wire, because the first time... Okay, fuel rail is back in. Spacers are underneath where they're supposed to be, one there and one underneath this fuel line here, right there. Hand tight is fine. There's a torque spec for that, I believe, in the either the Chilton manual or the online sources that you can find, but I don't know what it is. So I'm going hand tight, just to make sure that it's snug, it's tight, and it doesn't wobble. Also, when you're installing, remember the install order of your spark plug wires, because crossing one of those can result in a misfire, which is not nice. Another thing to remember is make sure that you replace the air intake temperature sensor that goes into the intake, the air intake snake, because otherwise you'll end up with a vacuum leak and a bunch of unmetered air, and the car will run terribly. Last thing is to make sure that's plugged in, and cap off your Schrader valve for your test port on your fuel rail, and you should be good to go. So that is replacing and cleaning an EGR valve. EGR should be cleaned with, you can clean it out with brake fluid. There are a lot of online sources for, a lot of other YouTube videos that show you how to clean an EGR valve. Take a look for one of those if you want the procedure. I'm sure the dealer uses a much different procedure, but brake fluid or brake cleaner has always worked for me. Okay, that's it. If I can think of anything else to say, I'll update it on the end of the video. Otherwise, hope it helped out. All you other 1996ers, this is kind of a dying breed. I see a lot more of these in the LKQ pick-apart yard where I am, so they're not everybody is taking care of these cars, and they are kind of a dying commodity here. So hopefully that helps you and gets you a lot more miles out of yours. Okay, just one last thing about this repair. Always remember to plug the vacuum line back into the EGR valve. Otherwise, it does you absolutely no good. No vacuum to the EGR valve means the valve does not open, and the excess gas stays right inside of the exhaust manifold and could lead to premature wear out of your oxygen sensor. Also, your car will end up running hot. That's it. Hope it helped out. Any questions, leave me a comment. Thanks.